So the next thing I think we should talk about as a panel is that city center. So I'm sure you both remember we were all quite involved in a defund the police and refund the community action last year, just collectively. And they added 13 million to the police budget, saying they couldn't reduce it, pensions, salaries, all these excuses. Now, boom, we have $6 million to demolish a warehouse. So I just wanted to kind of touch base with you on your thoughts on their vote for that, your thoughts on the city center, like how will it impact people? And if you were to be the one in charge of that 6 million, where would you prioritize right now during these pressing times? Andy, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we were all very much involved in defund the police, and we knew that this kind of stuff happens, right? They had no idea how they would move money from one thing to another because budgets are strict or whatever. But suddenly we have all the money in the world to make this huge, and it's a ridiculous amount of money, like $100 million. Like, can we talk about that? Like just that, like that's a ridiculous amount of money, and you pulled it out of like nowhere. So you do have that money. So it's like you agree things can be shifted around and things can change, but you just don't want them to. You want it to just go in the direction that you want it to go. And it's so tone deaf. Because it again, it's the exact opposite of anything that anyone's been asking for this whole time. I think the second part of the question was how would I, if I was in charge of it, how would I do it? I think someone brought up a really good point in the meeting. They said, hey, instead of spending this amount of money to totally move the whole thing, fix that ugly one you already have for the estimated $33 million. And then if you really are if you're really using this like Trojan horse of like, well, if we put it in East Tampa, look at all this like community stuff we're going to have, cops on every block and ice creams. And okay, how about we do all that community stuff that you wanted to with that $60 million that's going to be left and actually just straight up put it into the community, like you said, because then we all agree, okay, we're giving it back into the community. And you said you had that money. You said you wanted that. Let's do that minus the cops.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with Andy. And one of my questions, again, would be where's the money coming from suddenly that we couldn't invest it in community resources throughout the worst of the pandemic? We've got all of this money to suddenly invest in one of our poorest areas. Then why couldn't we have been doing this whole time with the food desert issues? Why couldn't we have gotten out there with tiny little setups for more people to get tested for COVID? Like, why couldn't money have been invested in the community this whole time? If it's suddenly here, if we've got millions to suddenly invest in a building, why didn't this money happen to appear when the city actually needed it, when the people really are suffering? And like Andy, what I would do with that, where I would be is, hey, we want to invest this money into the city. We've heard from people who actually live here in East Tampa that this is not what they think would benefit them. So what do you think would benefit you? Okay, maybe turning some churches into full-time rec centers, so that way their kids have places within the community that's already there that the kids can go to after school while the parents work. Even having people there late into the evening because it's a church anyways, they hold nighttime services and things like that. Like, there's so many things that we could do with that money, and the churches could invest, it take only thousands of those dollars, tiny small amounts, and do so much with it because of what they already have at their disposal. So investing that money in the community to get those community resources moving to actually help people with what they need seems like a better option than demolishing something that's been part of this city forever and putting an unwanted building in. Just is a waste. It's a waste of millions of dollars of resources that could actually save lives.
Yeah, it's pretty distressing, Black Rose. I mean, with the city's population, 19% are at or below the poverty line, 13% of Tampans don't have health insurance. I mean, you would just think that there'd be a slew of resources we could put the money in, but what do we know, right? One other thing about the city center, one thing that came up a lot, especially in the public comments, was the discussion about gentrification. Now, naturally, I'm sure city council is already going on preparation or a PR campaign, rather, to say that that won't be a product of this. But I'm pretty sure we logically know that it's a pretty high probability. How do you how do you feel this is going to impact, especially renters, those who don't own their homes, but even homeowners in the area, how it's going to impact that community, the Black and Brown community there specifically? And what kind of, if you were in city council, what type of reforms would you want to see to help stop gentrification? If you don't mind starting with that, Black Rose.
As far as gentrification goes, my biggest concern would definitely be for those of the lowest income. We're already pushing people out of the city further and further by raising prices because of the gentrification that's been happening everywhere. Places that single parents with multiple children used to be able to afford on their income is now almost impossible to find. You're having to go out to places like Gibsonton and Riverview, which don't have public transportation systems and things of that nature. So the gentrification is a serious concern. It's not just something that the city can just say, oh, but no, that won't be a concern, because it is. Anytime you're trying to invest money in making things look prettier rather than in the community and in the people that need it, you're always going to have the surrounding areas suffer by having their basic needs raised on them when their resources to get those needs met are staying the same or possibly even getting lower, because businesses are losing profit because of now we've got box stores coming in and all of these things that are happening that are taking out these money and resources that people were utilizing before. So honestly, if I were a city council member making these choices, I would want to make sure that if I couldn't get everybody else on board with not making this happen, I would want to see some policies in place that didn't push these people out, something that provided protections for people who are already living, especially for people who are already living in the area. We've got people who've had their homes for 20, 30 some odd years. And when this gentrification happens, they have no choice but to relocate because they get bought out or pushed out in whatever way, shapes, or form. There needs to be protection for these people, for their livelihoods. We would never see this in suburbia where somebody's being forced to give up something they've had for generations. Never, never. So stop looking at people who are below your level of standard as if they don't matter. And I think we'll see a lot of things change with the way city council runs stuff.
I kind of want to echo just everything that Black Rose is saying, because the main point that Black Rose made is like this, we would never see this. Like, where wouldn't we see this? We wouldn't see it in like white suburban America, right? And it kind of boils down to an extension of the white savior complex. Like, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to improve these things, but really all you're doing is like blackening the waters, like destroying the tree, you know what I mean? Like, and by extension, the people, because there's a difference between what they interpret as improving the area and supporting the area. Because you can get a lot of the things that you want done, fix the roads, put in whatever, some building that you want, whatever you want to make it pretty, while still maintaining the, let's use like the analogy of an ecosystem, like while still maintaining like all those people and improving their lives as well, not forcing them out because you know that they won't have a means to be able to afford the new thing that you just improved.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That's very pertinent. It's interesting because my understanding is some South Tampans are concerned about the overdevelopment in south of Gandy and are now trying to push development away from the South Tampa area, which is only going to incentivize our city council to do more in East Tampa. So it's just interesting watching these things go through a cycle and learning as we go, because we're not city planners. We're just regular everyday folks trying to make a change.